Hey, thank y'all so much for joining us on Sidebar. Thank you. Sidebartv.com. If you have not been there before, go check it out. Sidebar. You know the guys here. I'll introduce them in a minute. But one thing that we want you to do right now is take a moment to spread the word. We have just for a couple of weeks now been just streaming on Facebook, YouTube, X, and we want and love for you to be a part of the show, and that's why we read everything that you write in. We also are strongly looking for anybody that wants to contribute. It doesn't have to be a gob of money, although we would love a gob of money. Please email me, KarenKlaus@me.com. That's KarenClaus. I'll put it in the chat in a minute on Facebook at me.com. So let's take a look at what's trending this week in the news. I don't even want to bring this up, but and it's a non-news event, but it just like irked me. But are we counting American gold medals, or are we counting the Olympians, the American athletes that are trashing America? Let's see. I want to write those down. Also in the news, Obama talking about aliens. What is he going to talk about next to stay in the news? Democrats are threatening to boycott the State of the Union. New York City, wow. Are they becoming the People's Republic of Islam? And I don't know if you got a chance to see Rubio's speech, but if you didn't, in Munich, it might be worth your while. And then finally, Supreme Court striking down Trump's tariffs. And what does that mean now? Again, thank you so much for joining us. Every week you can come here to hear the former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Goss Law Group, and George Araujo, scholar, former chemist, pharmaceutical researcher, and director. So President Trump, kind of, I don't even know if this would be called a glitch, but the Supreme Court, I guess they're declaring unconstitutional his global tariff policy. What does that mean?
Well, there's a lot here. There's a lot to talk about. I guess I want to take a point of personal privilege first before we jump into that. The tariff talk is important. Constitution is important. Elections have consequences important. And I'm going to take a moment just to talk about just local races, just for a second.
Oh, please. No. I really want you to. Didn't I tell you he was going to talk about that?
Yeah, well, we have to. You know, we're early voting.
Yes.
People need to vote. Educate yourself about who you're going to vote for. I'm going to speak as a, I guess, a political observer, someone who's been in politics, but also as a brother. And, you know, I don't take politics too personal until someone makes it personal. But so I'm going to give observations. You know, my brother's opponent, I'm District 121 state rep, and I'm going to look. I disagree with my brother on things. We have disagreed over years over things very passionately. We're very good at disagreeing, as I always say. But when he's right, and I think he's done an excellent job in the state house. And I'm not just saying that. I just keep my mouth shut if I didn't think he had. And I'd criticize him constructively if someone asked me. But he's done a great job. He's not afraid to disagree with people, to include the governor, even though the governor supported him, because he's a man of principle. He's not a puppet. People didn't vote for a puppet. And he's not weak. And, you know, and his opponents, look, he's just a nobody who's put up by TLR, Texas for Lawsuit Reform, who throw a bunch of money, who all they want is puppets. And that's what they want. And Mark's not a puppet. And so they just throwing up this hack that doesn't know shit from Shinola, to be honest with you. Doesn't understand the issues. And he's talking about Mark's not the real conservative, and it's all political. My mom gets she wants to shank people, and everybody
I do too.
Well, but I don't. It is what it is. But I mean, you got to call out lies and bullshit, and it's just lies. Mark's his record speaks for itself, and I just had some notes here. I mean, he can speak for himself better, but I mean, on the border and law enforcement, no one's attacking his vote because he hasn't had a bad vote on law enforcement and the border. He got a helicopter for Bexar County, got over $3 million for Texas anti-gang units and for Bexar County Sheriff's Office. Nobody could have done that, especially as a freshman. He got it done. He's voted very strongly for freedom in parents and school bills. He's increased medical freedom protections, gave teachers more protection and authority. He actually voted, whether people agree or disagree, for the 10 Commandments and prayer back in school, not forcing it on people, but understanding our ideological foundation, whether you're a Christian or not. Defined sex between male and females. He supported that, banned males from school sports and bathrooms, banned foreign enemies from owning Texas lands, etc. And they say he's not the real conservative. He's endorsed by Trump, Abbott, whether you like Paxton or not, Paxton, Cruz, Cleat, DPS, Sapoa, department, DSABC, constables, all the law enforcement agencies, Right to Life, pro-life groups, NRA, GOA, Texas Gun Rights, Grassroots. 22 of the most conservative Republican House members have endorsed Mark LaHood. And that tells you everything. So when you talk about how he's not conservative, he's betraying conservative values. You're just full of shit. I mean, you just are. And this guy's a putz. I mean, he really is. He's a weak man. I look it in his eyes. He's a liar, and TLR sucks. I mean, they are not for the people. They're for their pocketbooks, and people better know that. And this guy is a puppet. They got their hand way up his ass, and they're controlling him, and he's a coward. That's it. Now that's my brother. That's my brother. That's the brother talking. That's the brother talking. I mean, so look, 121 and 121 has a choice whether they want a real public servant, a statesman that's not afraid to disagree with people and be a free thinker and to stand on principle, so he's never going to be a puppet and bought, or someone that's going to be just some hack it's going to do whatever TLR tells them to do and ultimately will screw the citizens of Texas because all they care about is their pocketbooks, not about injury. Look, I get it. There's lawyers that abuse stuff. There's a lot of people that abuse stuff. But you don't get rid of an institution or an idea just because people abuse it. You refine it. You get it better. You hold people accountable. You put people in office that have principles and morals and ethics and are not professional politicians like this. I guess he's a failed realtor. I don't know what he is. But I just can't stand cowardice. I can't stand weak, fake people. And Mark's not that. Mark's not that at all. And so I'm proud of him. He stepped into his own. He's done great in the House. 22 of the most conservative Republican House members are supporting Mark. You understand what I'm telling you? I mean, that tells you everything. The House Speaker, everybody's supporting Mark. And these are people that he's disagreed with on issues because they respect where he's coming from. I'm going to tell you something in the general election. When you have the dish rag magazine called The Express News endorsing Mark because his opponent didn't know shit. You can tell they begrudgingly, even though he's wrong about abortion, and okay, since you're the arbiter of what's right, whatever, the arrogance, but whatever, we'll take it. But we respect Mark because he'll always sit down, he'll always talk with you, he's never afraid of a conversation, and he'll listen. Tell me that's not what you want in a public servant. These are people that vehemently disagree with him on issues, but they said, but his opponent, I mean, read through the lines, didn't know shit because he's a puppet. And so that's just what people. Yeah, I mean that's what you have to do. I mean that you have to have choices to make. So that's it. Mark is great, doing great work. He's standing for truth. He's standing for the citizens of Texas, and especially 121. He'll talk to people that disagree with him. He'll listen, and he'll change his mind if he thinks he's wrong when he gets new data. And so to me, that's what you want in a public servant. So that's my push. I mean, I won't say what I really want to say about his opponent, and because TLR. I mean, I'm telling you, I can't speak bad enough about TLR. I think they're horrible. They don't serve anybody. All they do is they throw a bunch of money, and then you got these political prostitutes like Mark's opponent that whore themselves out for money, and then they just want to lie and say stuff. Lie all you want, I guess. You're going to have to answer to God for it in the end. But 121 has a choice. Texas has a choice. Even if you're not in 121, you should encourage people to vote in 121 and support Mark, and not because he's right about everything, but because he's right about the main things. And he's honest, and he's a man of integrity and honor, and so I'm proud of him, and he's going to do well again. So
I hope you do not mind, but I'm also going to talk about a candidate, and not because he contributed to the show, but he contributed to the show as a listener for his business. It's Randy Adams, and he is also running in District 35.
I don't know who that guy is.
Exactly. George talked to him for a little while. I mean, like, he's a stand-up dude, never run for office before, but he just had a calling after praying to say, America, even if he doesn't win, America needs help from people that, want to just state what is right and what is wrong, and that's who he's all about. And so Randy Adams has a place called Randy Adams Incorporated, and he buys and sells used cars. And so he is like our first contributor, and I just want to say thank you so much for doing that. And good luck. And also, don't forget, early voting already started.
It already started. People better vote. Don't bitch about it if you're not going to do something about it. And that's it. That's it. So vote Mark LaHood. I mean, not because he's my brother, because he's a damn good state rep, and,
right.
he's a man of honor. So
one thing Randy asked about, and I swear we're going to move on, but he looked at the candidates that Governor Abbott had endorsed, and he wondered, and I wonder, what is an endorsement? Does it mean anything?
And these days, I don't know if it does or not. It depends. For some people, it does. I mean, Trump's endorsement for a while meant a lot. Then it kind of wavered a little bit. But I mean, like Nelson Wolff and and the Castros around here, it doesn't mean shit. I mean, nobody cares who endorses what. Phil Hardberger, okay, whatever. I mean, I don't think anybody cares about endorsements too much. I think it's more personal. I don't know if it's globally. I mean, globally meaning, in your area regionally, if it makes a difference anymore. Maybe I think sometimes it does. Unless you just give your endorsement like you give out Halloween candy, then it doesn't really mean anything. And if you always endorse the same type of people, then you're just kind of like a boilerplate endorsement versus someone saying, "Oh wait, you endorse too? What?" Because I'm going to endorse. Cover your ears. Some Democrat judges coming up in the general.
I know.
And that's just it.
And that's because you personally know
because I know
what they
them.
stand for.
Yeah,
right.
because I think judicial races locally, county, district should not be partisan. I don't think the DA race should be partisan. I don't think the sheriff race should be partisan. I mean, I just don't. I mean, city council tries to do it that way. Commissioner doesn't do it that way. The commissioner's court and all that stuff, and the commissioners, you shouldn't, because then it forces people to get to know the person. What is a judge going to do? You think a judge is going to have the ability to talk about tariffs or abortion or gender? I mean, they can't, because they have these issues that come before them. So it's just really it's a stamp, and it means nothing. Is my point. So.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing up the whole partisan topic, because I was just asking George about this before we started on air, and that is that sometimes when you see these Supreme Court rulings, you're wondering, was that a vote just against Trump, or is that something that these truly, people went by the law, these Supreme Court justices went by the law, and that was their decision? Because sometimes it just doesn't seem like that anymore.
That's why it's useful to look at the opinions and what they wrote and see if the opinion is lodged in rationale and jurisprudence and case law, et cetera, et cetera. If they're making a concerted, honest effort. I mean, you might disagree with them, but if they're making a concerted effort to make an argument based on the law, then I think it's difficult to jump to the partisan line. Although I think there's plenty of criticism to go around here. I thought it was a fascinating. Nico, I have become a huge fan of Brett Kavanaugh. I read and reread his dissent, and I thought it was he just completely shredded and deconstructed the majority's opinion. And I admit I was lazy on the IEPA, on the actual history of the text. I usually like to get into these things because laws are sort of a culmination of human events. So laws fascinated me. The only real lawyer in this room is right here. But for me, constitutional law has fascinated me because it comes out, obviously, of massive historical movements and culture. And so I on this one, I didn't spend a whole lot of time reading about it. But it turns out I didn't have to, because all I had to do was read Kavanaugh's opinion. I mean, he delved into the history and went to the statutory text, the history. And it was stunningly fascinating. And I wish he would have provided that to John Roberts before Roberts, because it seems to me Roberts did actually the opposite. He did a very superficial, kind of cursory review of history. And so this was a very galvanizing. It was a great academic exercise for me, very humbling. But I love the process. I love the back and forth. And that's our tradition in America. Yeah. And I wish we need to get back to that. Agreed. So even though I disagree vehemently with the majority, I think the process was beautiful. And I think ultimately the dissent was incredibly powerful. And I think it actually provides people who support tariffs under IEPA or outside of IEPA. I think it gives them a lot of
legal. Let's not assume that people know what IEPA means.
Exactly.
International Emergency Economics Powers Act, right? It's a 1977 law that allows the president, here's the key, to regulate commerce after an emergency declared. Now, I did not read the dissent, and so I'm going to defer to you and people like Patrick. And this is not my area of expertise. I'm always a student when it comes to this, but I do have opinions, as you know. And so, the emergency declared by Trump, and correct me if I'm wrong, are trade deficits and importation of fentanyl. Those were the emergencies declared.
Yeah, there were two. That's right. One in February, one in April of last year.
And I guess my caution, and I think I was consistent about the caution back then, is, again, if it's not President Trump, what other president can declare an emergency, and how do you declare an emergency? And is it really just a workaround to declare an emergency and then implement IEPA, this law? So what the Supreme Court said essentially is that the law doesn't confer the power on the president to set tariffs. I'm just trying to boil it down. They have limited executive power on the president unless the power is is constitutional or is a clear delegation of Congress. And that's what we have to remember, that the power comes from Congress, and Congress is supposed to be setting the law, setting the policy, because it's the first branch of government. That's where the laws come from. We've lost track of that. The Congress is the first branch of government. Let me say that again. Congress, because Congress represents the people, and we're a country of the people, by the people, for the people. And whether Congress has gone off the rails, that's a different discussion. We're talking ideologically, theoretically. Congress is the first branch of government where laws come from, laws and policy from Congress, and then they can delegate. And so what the Supreme Court said is that Congress did not delegate that authority to the president. Now, you can apply it to President Trump because we're talking about tariffs, and I support the tariffs, by the way. So this is mixed emotions on me. I think Trump's tariffs policy has proven everybody wrong. We're not going into a recession. We'll talk about the economy in November in a second. I mean, things are going pretty good. Definitely, the tariffs didn't tank us. So all the the world is ending was wrong. But think about this, and I want to be fair. And I didn't study it the way George. It seems like George did, and definitely not like Patrick. Patrick's our institutional George in our office. But they did the same thing to Biden on mandated vaccines. So they were consistent about that, at least, right? But Biden tried to use the occupational safety statute, and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And we were all for that then. We were all for not mandating vaccines when Biden, the president at the time, tried to do that. So that's how I look at things. See, I'm looking at things. Well, I'm just I'm thinking. That's all. I'm just critically thinking. I'm looking at things. What if it's President AOC? Hold your mouth. And what if it's President Newsom? What if it's President Mamdani? Oh, hello. We're going to talk about New York in a little while. So all I'm saying is that's my analysis. I truly, and I do this every day. So maybe it's not easier for me. Maybe I'm just trained like a dog to do this. Is I really try to keep the blindfold on. I do. Now, I'm not saying that I need to go back and read his dissent. I believe you, George, when you say it's probably rich, it's beautiful. I'm going to learn so much. I have no doubt about that. But that's what the Supreme Court essentially said, that the first branch of government delegates power, and they didn't delegate. Now, I think there's a major questions doctrine that's part of the argued in the Constitution, right, about the Constitution. When an agency decision has major implications, there must be delegation of power. And so that's kind of the analysis. And so, the dissent does regulate I guess it talks about regulate meaning imposition of tariffs, right? That's the word, regulate. You can regulate foreign policy. Okay, what does it mean, imposition of tariffs? The dissent said yes. Regulate means the imposition of tariffs. The majority said no. And so it gets down to definitions once again, go figure. So, I didn't like the decision. I think I lean towards agreeing to it without reading the dissent yet. And it's only because I'm thinking of down the road, and I'm thinking of the blindfold and the law and what Congress does because look, I want Congress to go back to being Congress. I mean, Congress doesn't act the way that our founding fathers thought it would be. I mean, and so we've gotten away from it. So if the argument is we need a new way of doing business, and the president's going to be more of a monarch and make decisions unilaterally without the consent of Congress and the delegation of power, because the executive branch doesn't have power per se, only other than what Congress gives to them and delegates to them, we can have that discussion. That's a different discussion. So, I'm open to listen and to learn and to just debate and talk and critically think and things of that nature. But I'd like to hear from you and George, though, on this.
Yeah, I went back and looked at what Roberts wrote, and he said that while the phrasing was a bit contorted, and it seems to me contradictory. And this is where Kavanaugh had a heyday. He went in and just set up camp in the middle of these contradictions and just went after him. I mean, he said things like, "This doesn't make any sense. It's totally irrational." I mean, these are, I think, significant criticisms. To say that the Chief Justice, what he's writing, doesn't make any sense. That's a pretty big deal. Yeah. But I wanted to go back to what Roberts actually said, because Roberts said that the language of regulate importation, quote, regulate importation in the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that language can't bear the weight of Trump's tariffs. In other words, he says that there's no question that the president has authority under IEEPA to regulate importation.
Okay, so
but it doesn't include tariffs.
Yeah.
And so this is important, because this is part of what Kavanaugh just completely blew apart. And I mean blew apart because he went back again. He looked at the statutory text. He went at statutory history. Then he looked at how Congress allowed it to be used. So the idea, he said, that there's no precedent. Were you guys stoned? It's my paraphrase. But here's what Roberts wrote, quote, absent from IEEPA's lengthy list of powers is any mention of tariffs or duties. So let me just concede that, Nico. I think that's basically your point. The word
Right.
tariffs isn't in IEEPA.
That's right.
But regulate importation is, quotas is, embargoes are. So Kavanaugh went on and continued to elaborate on this, and this is Roberts. The omission is notable in light of the significant but specific powers Congress did go to the trouble of naming. It stands to reason, then, that had Congress intended to convey the distinct and extraordinary power to impose tariffs, it would have done so expressly as it had consistently in other tariff statutes. And then he went on and said that.
But you don't think that's a valid point?
Well, I think in isolation it is. But no one looks at this in isolation.
No, I understand that. But why do you think that would be isolated? Because in 1977, it's not like they didn't know what tariffs were. They were used before.
Well, Kavanaugh explains you're going to the end of the argument here,
Okay.
but because I wanted to mention something else that Robert said, just to defer to him a little bit before I get into why Kavanaugh said this doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Robert said, look, we don't attempt. So while he said that, it includes everything else in regulated importation, but it doesn't include tariffs. And he goes, we don't attempt to set forth the metes and bounds of the president's authority to regulate importation under IEEPA. So the president can regulate importation. I want to be very clear about this. A president can come and issue a quota. He can invoke a quota. A quota is a specific regulation on a specific type of import. A president has authority to do that under IEEPA. A president has an authority to do an embargo. He can literally ban all foreign importation coming into the country. And so Kavanaugh continues, and then after Robert says the following, that interpretive question of setting boundaries around the president's use of IEEPA is not in question today here. We're not going to get into that. He says, we're not setting boundaries. He says, the interpretive question is not at issue.
It's a definition.
And he says, our task today is to decide only whether the power to regulate importation as granted to the president in IEEPA embraces the power to impose tariffs. Yeah. And he says it clearly does not. Kavanaugh says it clearly does. And what he did is he went back and he looked at IEEPA 1977. And he makes, I think, an important, potent point. He goes back 6 years before that to 1971, Nico. And reading his dissent, he calls out the Trading with the Enemy Act. And he says that Nixon, under the Trading with the Enemy Act in 1971, imposed a 10% tariffs on most foreign imports coming in from most countries. And he said that language, that framing, that language, that context was extracted from that, and it was inserted into IEEPA. It was a copy and paste. The difference between the Trading with the Enemies Act in 1971 and IEEPA is that you use the Trading with Enemies Act in wartime and you use IEEPA in non-wartime scenarios. But the language is exactly the same. And in the Trading with Enemies Act, Congress expressly gave the president the ability to regulate importation, which included tariffs. In other words, the application of the language in TWEA includes tariffs. They did a copy and paste into IEEPA, and it has been accepted that that's what it includes because that's how it was exercised.
What do you mean it's been accepted?
Because that's the precedent. The precedent is that it has incluted that. It has
Did they make
included
that argument during oral arguments? Did anybody make? See, the problem is if you don't, I'm definitely going to go back and read Kavanaugh's now. I mean, I like where he's going with this, and precedence matters. But my question now is, I wonder if because what I remember us talking about back then after oral arguments, and we had this discussion in the office. Patrick predicted this. Patrick said that the Supreme Court.
Well, we were on Sidebar a couple of days later, and we said, okay, if there isn't, because we could just see an opening there, right? I mean, Patrick could certainly, obviously see it clearly, but just a plain reading of the text, you could say, well, if tariffs isn't mentioned, you could see how that could call into question an argument. But here's what Kavanaugh said to answer your question, because he answers it in his dissent. He says that members of Congress were plainly aware. I mean, how could they not be? This is his language. Members of Congress were plainly aware, after all, how could they not be, that the regulate importation language had recently been invoked by the president and interpreted by the courts to encompass tariffs.
So there's court precedent that says that this includes tariffs?
Amen.
What cases? Does he say? Like in whatever v. whatever, in the government, United States versus whatever, does he say the precedent? I mean, you can't just say that without stating the case, right?
Yes, he does.
He does. He says
In
he
the
gives
dissent. I didn't list
No,
them here.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm asking because I want to know. So he says that the cases that interpreted that to include tariffs.
Right, and he starts with
okay.
TWEA. He starts with that by saying that Nixon invoked 10% tariffs under the same act from which the language was lifted and inserted into IEPA. And then he wrote, if Congress wanted to exclude tariffs from IEPA scope, why would it enact the exact statutory language from TWEA that had just been invoked by the president and interpreted by the courts to cover tariffs? Neither the plaintiffs nor the court today offers a good answer to that question. Understandably so, because there is no good answer. This doesn't seem. And then he went on and said,
Why didn't they mention? I mean, I'm not. Look, I support Trump's tariffs. I mean, I just do. I think he needs to have that bargaining chip, and I think it's worked out well for us. But why didn't they mention tariffs? I mean, does
Why
anybody
didn't his
have
legal team anticipate this hole? That's what I want to know.
who's Eagles team?
Trump's.
Well, maybe they thought. I don't know. I wasn't in the room when those conversations. Maybe they figured. What's wrong?
I need to turn this on.
Kavanaugh says, look, the majority is trying to, quote, dodge the Nixon tariffs, because this is where it was tested, by observing that one appeals court interpretation of regulate importation to uphold President Nixon's tariffs doesn't suffice to describe the interpretation as well settled. And he said, fair enough. He said the problem is that the members of Congress literally lifted that language knowing the well-known Nixon tariffs under that language and how it had been applied, and then challenged in the appellate court and won, lifted that language, put it into a new act with that history as precedent. Obviously, they accepted the use of tariffs.
Yeah.
And so the idea that somehow, miraculously now it doesn't, that doesn't seem to make much sense, he said. In fact, he comes back and he uses, I think, a great example. and then I'll say this and I'll shut up. He says, as they interpret the statute, the president could, for example, block all imports from China if he wants.
Yes.
But he cannot order even a $1 tariff on goods imported from China.
Yeah, that doesn't
That
make
approach
sense.
doesn't seem to make much sense. He wrote. I'm telling you, it was the whole opinion was like this. It was history, conclusion, and in between he talked about precedent.
What it sounds like is it's logical. It's very logical, and so. God, I mean, I wish they would have come down a different way. To be honest with you, this is me personally now talking. I always look at it. My analysis is always past Trump, past whoever I support, past Rubio, past Vance, past whatever, because I'm sure as hell glad that the Supreme Court did what they did to Biden back then. When he tried to do that mandated vaccine, trying to use another application of a statute for safety for employment and workers that was stretching the ball, and they yanked him in also. So
Nico, I want to ask this, and this is maybe where Patrick was coming from, and Kavanaugh brought this up because he goes, basically the majority is arguing that the president checked off the wrong statutory box.
Meaning he should have used another statute?
Yeah. He says, and Kavanaugh said, now, even though I disagree that this was the wrong statutory box, but it basically comes down to that, it seems to me. He says it doesn't really seem to be that potent an argument, given the circumstances under which IEPA came to be and the historical precedent. And then he concluded this: although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. He's trying to be measured in his language, but watch, he kind of unleashes. That is because numerous other federal statutes authorize the president to impose tariffs and might justify most, if not all, of the tariffs at issue in this case, albeit perhaps with a few additional procedural steps that IEPA as an emergency statute does not require. And in fact, and then he went on to list them. It was amazing. He went back to the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, the Trade Act of 1974, sections 122, 201, 301. And he's basically giving the president of the United States a tutorial.
Answers to the quiz.
That was my next question. Okay, that's good.
This is the kind of takedown.
It's me.
Do I make you want to break out in song?
Yes.
I mean, this is exciting, isn't it? So,
It was my Bible verse of the day. I'm not kidding.
Oh, in that case, we'll take it. Little worship music to
What is
Tariff
it?
Talk.
What is
I don't
the
know.
Bible
I already
verse?
got
What
rid
is
of it
it?
because of y'all. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so he basically, to your point, used the word, he gave the president a roadmap to say, look, this is inarguable. He said the president of the United States not only has virtually unlimited, and I'll say virtually because it's not unlimited, ability or powers to regulate importation. What Trump has tried to do, he actually said, is to be measured. He's actually tried to be measured because, and then he goes on and says that the president of the United States, how does the president of the United States, Nico, regulate importation to the point of literally stopping all foreign imports and then through licenses? So there's a roadmap here for the president of the United States.
Maybe it's because I know how the backdoor dealing goes. I wonder if they had a conversation. I don't know, man. That they just said, look, we're going to come down this way. Kavanaugh, you give the president his marching orders on how he can do this legally. We'll come down this way because then they're thinking of Biden. I don't know. I'm not saying that's what happened.
I know, but
I'm just telling you.
Could.
I mean, because they use similar logic, different statute. Yes. You have one with vaccines and medical intervention versus tariffs, but you have to be consistent. But yet then Kavanaugh just gives Trump the roadmap to do it anyway. Who knows, man?
I've got my bullshit meters is on high here, Nico, and I'm in fact the hypocrisy meter is way off the charts here as it pertains to John Roberts. So he basically calls us a tax. He says only Congress has the right to levy a tax, not the president of the United States. And I thought this is rich, and there's nothing in the language that would ever suggest that this is acceptable. This is clearly a tax. Well, this is the kind of thing he said basically in the Affordable Care Act. Remember, it was John Roberts whose opinion made Obamacare a thing. And if you remember, this is astonishing to me. He basically said that Congress has a right to make the American people buy a product that they don't want. And if they don't want to get it, that Congress has a right to fine them for it. Somehow he found that in the United States Constitution and called it a tax. There's no language at all for precedent for that. And all of a sudden, he's concerned here that the president of the United States is wading beyond the meaning of the law to find tariffs where tariffs aren't. Interestingly, there's tariffs all over the place, but it seems to me in the Affordable Care Act, he made the exact opposite, or came to the exact opposite conclusion.
Does that surprise you about Roberts or what?
What I'm saying is that this man picks and chooses.
I agree.
How, and it's just blatant.
I'm no fan of that.
And so when you said a backroom conferencing, I thought, yeah, I wonder if sometime during that conference somebody might picked out his inability to resist.
Well, I mean, even
hypocrisy.
if he would have voted the other way, it would have been 5-4 against anyway, right? I mean,
well, what surprised me, what I didn't like about Gorsuch, because I love the way Gorsuch writes, is that basically his and Amy Coney Barrett's concurrence were, what he said. And I thought, okay, that would have been these guys are great writers. And Amy Coney Barrett went on a big speech circuit because she released a book last year, which I bought, which I loved. And in the book, it's almost like she's channeling the hood. You got to go to the law. You got to watch the emotion.
Yeah.
Got to go to the law.
Interesting.
What is the spirit of the law, and what is the context of the law, and what is the precedent of the law? What were the founders thinking when they wrote the law, the constitutional law? So she makes, I think, a really potent, it should be a textbook, I think, in law schools, for what it's worth. She just did that circuit. And where was that Amy Coney Barrett here?
Well, that's why I didn't know they did that. What he said, that just makes me think my theory maybe, I don't know.
That's how I read it, considering how developed Gorsuch's concurrences or opinions are. Yeah. And then the three left wing forget about it. I mean, they go against Trump just for breathing.
Not to wrap it up, but seriously, does that mean the tariffs go back? Does that mean the tariffs stay? Is there going to be a checkbook?
Trump's answered your question, FYI. I knew you were going to ask that, and he has. Next day, if not the same day.
There are alternatives that we can use.
He invoked a 10% tariff under the appropriate sections on foreign nations as a kind of warning. Don't get too comfortable. And if you think, quote unquote, refunds are coming, you're smoking a pipe. Why in the world would we refund $175 billion only to immediately charge them again? So I think at the end of the day, this is much ado about nothing. But man, I think every American should avail themselves of the opinion and the dissent. I think we should celebrate the process, Nico. This is really great. I wish the country's got to come back to this. The court, for as much as I hate the majority opinion, this models how this wonderful constitutional republic was built on vigorous, meaningful, rational debate.
Even if you disagree with it.
even if you
Even
disagree.
if you disagree with it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
There was somebody that was saying something funny. I can't remember. Like if Ernest said, "When Schumer is happy, you know it's wrong."
I don't know what he's happy about.
The decision.
No, but I mean, I
against
think
tariffs. Yeah.
And Jonathan Turley, I read his. He was just sort of a summary.
Where was he
And,
at?
if you're on the left, you'll be really pissed about what Turley said. He basically did kind of a summary of what we've done here in his own words. But at the end of the day, I think that it'll be a distinction without a difference. IEPA simply what allowed the president to expedite, and I think his emergencies were legitimate, and I think that got lost on the average American because Americans aren't particularly, they're literate about the pain they feel, but they're not typically literate on why. And Trump has been crying about this since 1988, right? I mean, he's been talking about how we've been outsourcing our manufacturing base. Rupert Murdoch in 2003 said that we've been transferring American wealth to foreign entities for way too long.
Yeah.
And so, what are the solutions going forward? I think you're going to hear them over the next few days. But I'm not terribly concerned about this. I don't think it's going to have a significant change at all on the bottom line of the
It's
president's
just a little
economic policy.
political kick in the nuts. That's all.
But you don't think that countries are like, "Oh, good, we don't have to pay anymore."
No.
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 Where
They'd be foolish to.
Yeah.
Where are the countries here in the 24, 48 hours that this has
Nowhere.
happened? Where are the countries saying that
Silence.
I mean, you may have a few, but good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go next?
So
Let's do
I
it.
don't know. I'm thinking about Marco Rubio because I mean, this is the world
boy.
stage that we're talking about when
Oh,
it comes
boy.
to
That's a good one.
tariffs, and maybe we should talk about what Rubio kind of stood in front of them and said.
If you haven't heard Rubio's speech in Munich,
Yeah.
you need to. You need to. I mean, it was very Reagan-esque, if you can say. It was a master class. He's a master foreign statesman. And speeches like that just make you
Goosebumps.
Well,
for
it makes
me.
you. It make,
For
well,
me.
it just.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Look, I mean, he's got an interesting voice. He has like almost like a little bit of a lisp.
lisp, he
you know,
does,
it's like
yes.
it's like that. Not even a lisp, but like a lisp that way.
I
And I'm
know.
not being critical. I'm just being. So when you hear him speak, but his demeanor, he's stoic when he needs to be stoic. He knows how to bring humor. He's just an effective communicator because his looks, his expressions. He's comfortable in his skin. You see this genuineness. It's masterful. I mean, when you think about that, he read the room well. You know, Vance gave a similar speech last year.
I was going to say I don't think Rubio would be as effective without Vance laying the groundwork.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I think Vance's speech was excellent last year. It was excellent, but it lacked the connection, the nexus to Europe. So what Rubio did, he got 3 ovations, not standing ovation at the end, but 3 claps during the speech. 3 of them. I was listening to the State of the Union, and we'll talk about State of the Union in a little while, and why I think that's a worthless exercise. But I mean, so you know, they clapped for him 3 times, then they stood for him at the end. But what he took them through is he reminded them of the deep ties we have to Europe, of the friendship. He called them old friends. And he said that we are really birthed from you. And he elevated their self-worth. And it wasn't faux compliments. It wasn't bullshit compliments.
He's reassuring them and calming them to say,
But he
"We're
also
on your
criticized the
side."
hell out of them.
Right. But
He-
they know that they deserve that, don't they?
Well, I don't know if they know it, but
do.
but they clapped for him.
Right.
So they must have acknowledged it. But he criticized them appropriately, but he didn't come in and just kick them in the nuts. He hugged them first, and then he kicked them in the nuts, and then he hugged them at leaving. He hugged them coming, he hugged them going, and that's what I just think that was very. It was critical. He acknowledged their necessity, Europe's necessity. He acknowledged their independence. He acknowledged their purpose in America. He gave them. He reminded them of the history lesson, and he brought in history. And things. He was funny when it was appropriate, talking about beer and he talking about the Beatles, and just he just knew. He was intellectually honest, and he challenged them. But he asked them. He also challenged them. Let's move forward together. Let's stand. He invoked Christian ideology 4 times throughout. He was very clear about the ideology of Europe, and we shouldn't be ashamed of it, and you shouldn't be ashamed of your roots. And he talked about immigration. He talked about. I mean, I just thought it was masterful. I wonder if he wrote it or what, but it was great.
I'm gonna I want to add to that by giving credit to Vance, and here because I want to elaborate on this and get your thoughts on it
Please ask me.
because there was some overlap between the speeches, the same exact place, the Munich Security Conference, right?
Yep.
Same exact speech, virtually at the same time, a year apart, and a lot's happened in that year, and so it seems to me you had Vance come in with the initial jab, and as you literally saw Christian theology and Christian principles being modeled between the first speech and the second speech, and I don't think the appeal to Christian principles was accidental. To Nico's point, I think it was throughout, and it was deliberate. But Vance comes in, and he chastises wrongdoing. I mean, he goes after this neglect of, if you remember, he just excoriated them for neglecting democratic values and their cultural heritage. Basically, repudiated them for this love affair with self-hatred. And neglecting the needs of their people. And he was heavy on the censorship complex in Europe, literally going after their own people for exercising democratic values upon which Europe was built. And then he very superficially, I mean, he said it, but compared to Rubio, went after mass migration. He didn't do much of a kind of diagnosis of the issues. He was mostly superficial, chastised them for neglecting their people, blowing off their values, hating themselves, hating their own democratic values, bringing in a crap ton of foreign people who have no interest in the values, who resist assimilation, and who basically erode sort of the commonality of the European continent around Christian roots. This was Vance, and it was pretty much fire and brimstone. Rubio comes in a year later, and what's happened in that year? You've got the Trump, and Rubio explained that. So you can see chastisement, and now there's this kind of, hey, are you repentant yet? Because he comes in a year later after NATO's feet was held to the fire, and NATO was made to pony up, their contributions to their own national defense, which the United States was basically carrying. So the Trump administration last year has held NATO accountable. The Trump administration has invoked tariffs, shall we say tariffs? Major tariffs on the European continent to remind Europe that they've been profiting at America's cost, and that family doesn't do that. Relatives don't do that. You can pick your friends, but you're stuck with your relatives, and good relatives don't do that. So this is a year later of holding Europe to the fire. So Rubio comes in a year later, and he's there to say, it's almost like on the repentance and almost restoration side of the equation. And there's got to be a softer touch. He was more velvety. There's got to be a hug. And so he came in and he called them family, essentially, where the United States is a child of Europe. And
Are you insinuating that they planned these speeches together?
what I'm insinuating is that there's a coordination. I don't think Vance anticipated Rubio's speech.
No.
But what I'm saying is that I don't think we can divorce the meaning and the content of the speech from the stage that Vance set, because he came in and slapped them about a year ago, but there's been a conditioning, there's been an implementation of the principles of Vance's speech over the year, and so you have a softer Europe. And so I think Rubio comes in, who was perfect, by the way, to deliver that tone and tenor of the speech, and Europe was kind of seasoned over the last year. The Trump administration has come in and said, look, this isn't America alone. We'll do it alone if we have to.
I love that he said that.
But
I
we
love that he
don't
said
want
that.
to do that because we are family, basically.
Yeah.
And I just thought
But then he also reminded them how strong America is.
Yes.
It took special forces to do this. It took 14 bombs to do this. When we talking about Iran, so he let them know, like, hey, don't forget we're badasses, but we prefer to be with our family and to do it. That's the way to do it.
And that's happened in the last 12 months.
No, I get that.
And so Vance comes in. You've got Biden in the backdrop. So they're all sitting there being, yeah, whatever, let's get this guy done. But it wasn't a whatever speech, because it was followed by 12 months of action and decisive action to say, we're serious about this. And so I think you have a tenderized Europe who knows better than to think that Rocco Rubio is just lip speak.
Yeah, but you're not. I mean, I think Vance could have executed his speech differently back then. Look, you could say the same. Look, I like. Let me just say this.
I just don't think it would have been as effective as Rubio because
I don't know if it was effective. When people roll your eyes at you, it's not effective.
No, I know, brother, but it wasn't. But he didn't. I can understand. Europe doesn't give a shit. That's the point. So Vance comes in cold turkey after Biden. I mean, what has been reversed in the last 12 months? Most Americans will only learn about it in the next 3 to 5 months when there's a ton of money in their bank account.
So what was the purpose of the speech?
The purpose, well, I think the purpose of the speech, if you look at it, there's an appeal to Christian roots, right?
Well,
So-
in Rubio's, I'm talking about Vance. Look, I
I think it was
really like Vance.
Great question.
I
Chastisement.
really like Vance.
I think chastisement, speaking the truth, and it's harsh at first, but it's absolutely necessary. He pulled the Band-Aid off. That's what Vance did. Rubio came in and he's smooth. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there was a warning there, but he was smooth. He was it was almost like, hey, you guys ready to make up yet? I mean, do you need another year to show how serious we are? Do you want another year like that? Because it can go a lot smoother. Because it was a rough year for Europe, a really, really rough year for Europe. And the United States was Big Daddy.
I think. Look, I'm a huge supporter of Vance. I just think he could have been just as rough, but then also given an open door. That's all I'm saying.
I'm actually not trying. I'm not trying to elevate Vance, the statesman. Although I do think a lot of Vance. I'm trying to elevate the tone and tempo of the speech.
Let me tell you the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is I think you saw the difference in experience. You have style differences, although they're similar in some ways. Vance is not a go F yourself balls. You know, he can be direct. I like when Vance calls people out. I love when he does interviews. That one CNN interview during the election, I mean, just took her nuts. I mean, I love it. I'm a big fan of Vance's. I just think, remember, Vance was a 2-year senator when he gave that speech last year. I mean, Rubio's season, and let me tell you my point. My point is, if the Vance today was in the same situation, but somehow superimposed the experience he has today, I think he would have tweaked his speech, not changed the substance of it. Because you can say the right thing the wrong way and still not be an effective speaker or make your point in advocacy. And we have to deal with that in trials all the time.
You're beyond me. You're gonna have to. You gotta back up to my limited IQ here for a moment. Bear with me here.
That was
just a moment.
condescending sarcasm.
Yes, it was.
Go ahead.
No, seriously. I want to, because I'm trying to be very surgical in this, and I feel it in the process. I'm missing you, and I don't want to do that. I just think that you saw these guys both appealing Europe to come back to its Christian roots from where they get principles and ultimately from where they got their political imperatives and their political priorities as a continent of Europe. In other words, the protection of individual liberties ultimately comes from a Judeo-Christian ethos. It was an appeal. Both of them appealed to coming back to that. And all I'm saying is, if you look at Christian doctrine and if you look at Christianity, you see this progress from chastisement, speaking the truth in love, which admittedly is rough, tough love, to repentance, to redemption, to restoration. And I think you can see that linearity between speech 1 and speech 2. And in between has been a withdrawal from really shitty practices led by the United States. And Rubio came in on that trajectory, trying to draw that parallel.
It was
here.
a different
politically.
scenario, sure.
What I'm appealing is that I think you see the practice of Judeo-Christian methodology or Judeo-Christian doctrine but politically. And so Rubio comes in, and you've got to tenderize Europe because they've had their ass kicked for a year. And Rubio reminded them of that. And he actually was humble about it. He says, look, it wasn't just you guys. We were in a bad way too. In fact, Vance came in and admitted just as much. The United States has been just as guilty. Those days are over under Trump. Yeah. So I guess it's those parallels that stuck out at me. And I think that's part of what made it particularly powerful. Going back to why are we even talking about this stuff? It's because we have a shared ethos that goes deeper and it's worth fighting for. Our principles were forged in the crucible of faith. Man, I think it would be after a year has passed. That's why I think you got that standing ovation. That's why I think you got, I love his tenure, his tenor. I love the way he communicates. I love the substance of the speech. It was warmer than Vance, absolutely. But I think after a year of being shown the truth the hard way, I think that's helped. And if you are a parent, if you're a parent and you've ever had a child you needed discipline, if you've ever needed discipline, like I've needed a lot of discipline in my life, that resonates with you. We're on a trajectory of redemption, and I hope that Europe continues. I hope that Europe doesn't sit there and say, we'll just go through the motions and pretend, and then hope this president loses the election to some Democrat, and then we can go back to have our wet dream with communism. I really hope that this goes somewhere. I do, because it was an appeal. Will Europe respond? That's the question. I'm gratified. I love the standing ovation. Do I think he won people over? I do. So I'm comforted by that.
But you know me, if it doesn't move the needle, then it's just noise for me.
Well,
Got to move the needle.
Mom Donnie didn't get the memo about his speech because
But Mom Donnie is an example of where Europe's going to go.
Exactly.
I mean, this is. I mean, look, it is serious. This is not this. I guess that's why I'm not. To me, it's all theory, and we can get in our little bubbles, and we can, you're not conservative enough, or you're not this enough, or we all sound great, and everybody's typing away in their underwear at home, and criticizing everybody. But we're moving the needle, because that's it. I mean, that's the bottom line for me. Because if we don't think that, in short months in November, that things could change drastically here in the United States. And then 2 years later, even more drastic. And if you don't think that Democrats taking over the presidency, and if they win Congress, that they're not going to work like double time to implement things, knowing you're crazy. If you thought Biden was bad, forget about it. Get ready. Go back to buying your storage food and your emergency shit, and go do whatever you. All of it. And I have mine. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is we got to move the needle. We have to win elections. We have to win hearts and minds. We have to have consistency. I support what Trump has done. That's why I'm so critical on him, because I want him to continue to do it. I'm critical on my kids because I want them to do well, because that's because I love my children. I don't know if I love Trump, but I love what he's doing, and so I want to see him continue, and I want someone to take the torch. Whether it's Vance or Rubio, I prefer Rubio over Vance, even though I like Vance a lot. I'm not saying that I don't like Vance. I like him a lot. But I'm just telling you, moving forward, we got to continue to win, or else all these other idiots are just going to weigh us out. That's all they're doing, is waiting us out. And we talked about this weeks ago.
Yep.
They're like, okay, whatever. Yep, sounds great. Oh, it's going to hurt for now, but this is only 3 rounds of a 12-round fight. I can sustain 3 rounds, and I'll still win the fight in the end. And we'll just wait for the next president and take advantage of that dipshit. Can you imagine AOC as president? Can you imagine that dipshit as president? So what do you think about Taiwan being taken over? Nobody briefed her on that ever. You're on the world stage. She's an idiot.
So awful.
And I don't like to criticize people by calling them names.
Awful.
I just don't. And how do you, please somebody, Mark Antoine, my good friend, Alamo Talk, because he's a friend now. But and maybe he won't defend it. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll say she's not one. She's God bless you. She's one of our idiots on our side. Maybe they just call her out like a Bill Maher would. Good for you then. Then you have a little bit more credibility. With me. But what I'm saying is she's an idiot. Just somebody brief her. And then people are talking about her. But here's the problem that worries me. Don't think she's not a contender.
Of course she's a contender.
Don't think she's not a contender in this world, in this country, and I'm not being condescending or mean, with people just too busy to learn, too busy to study, too busy to advocate, people that get caught up in their emotions and their feelings, because we're emotional creatures. Right. We like something even when Trump pisses the shit out of me, I'm still going to support him, because I support his policies. I support his ideology, not his personality always, but what he's trying to do. And I support the platform as a whole. Again, it's the candidate they're not irrelevant. They're not irrelevant. Because look at this dipshit running against this little bitch running against my brother. So there's people that lie. There's people that claim to be something and they're not. I get all that. I'm with you on that. Whoever wants to make that comment. But all I'm saying is it's a set of ideas that we're trying to implement to affect the lives of others. A set of ideas advocated by a group of people to affect the lives of others. That is a good definition of politics. So my politique happens to be biblically minded, but when I implement that biblical ideology into a political atmosphere, I think that most people are blessed. All I'm saying is we have to continue to win. We've only won once. We have to win moving forward. Consistency if we're going to make long-lasting change for our children and grandchildren.
And so I think you position it that way. You don't just have a clash of political priorities. You have a clash of worldviews. This is where the conversation needs to rest, and this is where the clash ultimately is. And AOC has a very different worldview. And it's not a deep thinking worldview, because it doesn't have to be. It's Marxist in nature, so it appeals primarily and mostly to the emotion. because you can destroy an economy, you can destroy a people, you can destroy a nation on emotion. You can. In fact, that is the stuff of an insurgency. That is the stuff of insurgencies, which is what we're seeing at most American public schools right now. This is what we'll see. We haven't talked about the topic, but I'm sure we'll talk about the Democrat boycott of the State of the Union. I also agree with you. I happen to think the State of the Union used to have a role, but it's become a ridiculous,
we'll talk about it. Yeah, it's
a ridiculous exercise, unfortunately. And part of it is because it's become so uncivil. It's become undignified. It used to be a place where we could actually come and demonstrate that we are the United States of America. Despite deep disagreements politically, we come together and we listen to the executive branch talk about the priorities for the country. And there's an orderly and dignified dissent or response to that, rationally. Those days seem to be over. But why? Because there's a worldview that opposes the worldview that Rubio was espousing in Munich. This is Rubio. I mean, I just wanted to say how he wrapped it up, Nico. We made these mistakes together.
Yep.
What were the mistakes? Well, there were mistakes associated with giving into the other worldview. What's AOC's worldview? Well, she's in favor of these nations deindustrializing. She's in favor of that. She's in favor of outsourcing our sovereignty. She's in favor of the notion of the global citizen, which Rubio repudiated, as did Vance. This notion that you're a global citizen and that nationhood doesn't matter and that you shouldn't preserve your ideals of a people, that it's okay to just bring in whoever. Appeasing a climate change cult, he called it.
Yes, I like that.
And she's part of that. She's part of that cult. Irrational, advancing policies that are not rooted in empirical data, rational data, doesn't care. It's all about emotion. How does it feel? So these are very different worldviews at play. One that is rationally based, the one that's emotionally based. One that actually cares about objective and empirical data. The other one just cares how you feel about whatever data you already agree with and dismiss everything else you disagree with. Very different, radically different worldviews. And so I wonder if Americans are computing at that level, Nico. I don't know that they are. I don't think Americans appreciate that there are battles of worldviews here. I mean, you talk about communism, Marxism. The average American doesn't understand, can't function at that level. They don't really understand it. I think that's dangerous. So let's see what happens. I hope that the substance of Rubio's speech becomes a reality. If it does, AOC doesn't have a chance.
Sid says something that maybe we should just touch on before we change subjects, but she says it surely seems like the more ignorant a Democrat, the more loony the lefties embrace them. And why is that? The more out there, like AOC, that a candidate or a possible candidate is, they all rally around them.
Well, I would ask Sid, what's the objective? People listening, what do they believe the objective of the formerly Democrat Party, now really the Socialist Communist Party in the United States? What is the objective of the party? If you had to say right now, just to kind of encapsulate it in a statement, if you're a Democrat, I would ask Mark Antoine, who allegedly is a Democrat, and Alamo Talk. What's the objective? What's the mission statement of the Democrat Party? I mean, because as a conservative, I would say that the only thing that seems to be coming from the party is hate Trump.
Yeah.
Just disagree with Trump. Just resist Trump. Just hate him. What substantive policy based on rational principles that will help the people of the United States? By rational, I mean logically consistent. What principles is the Democrat Party putting out there that will make the United States a better, more orderly nation? What? I can't think of anything.
But the more ridiculous.
So what's the objective, Karen?
Right.
So Sid, what's the objective? And the objective is insurgency and revolution. A revolution is a sudden deposition or change of the current order through violent means. I listen to Democrat lawmakers all the time talk about, as we speak, that they hate people like me and that the first chance they'll get, they'll put me in prison. I'll say this again as Nico sits back down. What I've been hearing from Democrat politicians, and it's stunning how frequent it is. I don't know if you guys have watched the Jack Smith hearing when Democrat politicians like Pramila Jayapal interviewed him and the truly intellectually challenged Hank Johnson. Yes, the Hank Johnson from 2000, same Hank Johnson from 2010 that in a testimony with Admiral Robert Willard said he was concerned about the island of Guam capsizing because there were too many people. He was talking about. He literally said that. So when Hank Johnson and Prama Jayapal and others like them, the Chris Murphys and the Van Holland, the Chris Van Hollands, when they're defending mass migration into the United States. And then they're threatening that as soon as Trump is out of office, that the lawfare is going to continue, that Trump aides, that lawfare against them will continue, that Trump supporters need to watch their backs. I mean, when they're making these statements on a regular basis, I believe them. When they tell them that they hate me.
So what's the answer?
Well, what I'm saying is, to Sid, what is the objective Democrat Party? The objective is revolution. The objective of...
So what's the answer?
What do you mean? What's the answer? The answer is every chance we get to oppose that worldview. Okay. The question is, how do we oppose that worldview? And it seems to me that's the substance of this show every Saturday morning.
The answer is to win elections. That's my point. That's the answer.
Well,
that's the only answer.
Practical
well, no,
answer is to win
but
elections.
There's every answer, but winning an election means to do what you do leading up to that. Because what you're saying to do is resist leads to winning elections. Because the answer is not to let them in power. That's the answer. And the only way you don't let them in power is the people don't vote for them in power.
You push back
and the
on
way that you
shitty
stop them
ideas
from
with good
voting
ideas.
to get in power is you change hearts and minds. Dare I say, move the needle. That's my point. I mean, I've been very consistent about this. This means nothing to me for us to get together and have a rah session and talk about how effed up the world is. Oh, I'm so happy that we have it all figured out, and then it doesn't matter, and then the world keeps closing in on us.
Right.
And then you can't move quick enough. What are you going to move to little conservative areas, and then the operative word is little, and then the big areas will consume you eventually. You can't run quick enough. So we have to stand our ground, and we have to win hearts and minds, which ultimately win elections. And we stay, and then this ideology stays in power imperfectly, but it stays in power. And you still criticize people you agree with, like my brother does, and you push back based off principles, not based off your feelings, or not based off a party, off principles that are supported by a party, by the way. And that's the answer. But you've got to win hearts and minds. If we cannot present that's why I was a big supporter of Charlie Kirk. That's why I his style of doing it, the way he did it. I mean, he's got whatever. We all have our different personality quirks, but he was an effective communicator, and he was informed. And he was knowledgeable, and he was intellectually honest, and he encouraged conversation, and he changed hearts and minds, and he made a difference. He moved the needle. Trump doesn't win without Charlie Kirk, my humble opinion. Oof, the young vote. He doesn't.
I know.
Now, there was a lot of synergistic. There was all the podcasting. There was this. There was a collective effort. Laura Trump and whatever her colleague was, they were running the RNC. They got their shit together at that time. I mean, so there was a lot of synergy, too. Don't get me wrong. But Charlie was a big part of it. And so that's what we need. We need more conversation. We need intellectual conversation, but not just intellectual, persuasive. Because you can be right intellectually, but bad in your. So you can have an IQ intellectually, but a low IQ in communication, and you're still going to lose. In trial, you will.
So Vance and Rubio aren't the
I wasn't
young?
pointing at you. I'm just saying in general.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm looking at George. He's like, oh.
Let me just stand up and leave the room here.
Yeah, get the hell out of here.
to recoup from that. But there's right, brother. But there's election, and there's the communication aspect of it, and there's the voting aspect of it. But then there's everything that leads up to it. So you've got a significant influx of young people that came to the Trump side and voted in November of 2024 for Trump. You had a huge influx of demographics that normally vote almost exclusively for Democrats, including minorities, that came over to Trump. Trump's ideas sold. And the two issues were what? Immigration and the economy. Here's the problem. Article 2 can't do everything. The executive can't do everything. Where's Article 1?
Nor should he do everything.
Well, exactly. But where's Article 1 been? So we have a passage of the One Big Beautiful Act, which was a huge triumph. But I want to know, in practice, what has this Congress done? I love how these people sit in judgment of Trump's, by the way, his approval rating. 2 different polls came up. He's at 50% approval. I love how they repudiate Trump for a sinking approval rating, and this body has an approval rating of 17 to 18%.
I got it.
Okay,
I'm with you.
An 80% disapproval rating because they don't do jack shit.
I agree, 100%. That's why I say
ultimately the people who came over to Trump to put Trump in power and really to bring a lot of new blood into Congress. What are they going to think when they come up to the midterms? They're going to look and say, "What have you done for me lately?" It's a legitimate question. So some things naturally take time, like to reverse the damage, the economic damage under Biden, and then to sort of kickstart a new economic under new economic principles, which, by the way, is clearly happening. But been very little communication about that. I was glad to see Trump in Georgia, by the way, where he basically went to Georgia to talk about what exactly his economic policies have done. There needs to be a lot more of that.
A lot more of that.
This Congress is nowhere to be found. And we have a ton of money. We've got a lot more money than the Democrat Party. How are we using that money? We're not using it in communication. I'm frustrated beyond hell right now.
So am I. But how dare you criticize our side? I mean, of course we're going to criticize our side, and we're going to do it constructively because we want the ideas that are espoused by the platform today, at least I'll say that today, to bless this country. Because the other way sucks. And so, if you don't think Mamdani is where it's going, where this morning call to prayer being blasted in New York, we lost our minds? Have you lost your minds? Look, I'm going to say this. I don't give a shit who it offends. Study Islam. That's why I don't talk about Muslims, because those are the people, and there's different varying devotion to the ideology. Sure. So I know so many people that call themselves Muslim, but if they wouldn't last 2 seconds in Yemen or Saudi. I mean, they just don't, because they're Americanized and they have different ideology. They have the title without the ideology, and it's not really implemented. Study Islam, study the Hadith, the Quran, the Sirah, study all those 3 books, study the traditions, study the implementation of militant Islam. There's no radical Islam. Islam is radical. It just is. Islam is radical. Look at the ideas, they're radical. Now there's militant implementation of it. If you're militant, you're going to stick to it. That's different. This call to prayer. There's even, did you see this discussion on dogs? That they don't want you to have a dog as a pet because a dog is haram. Haram means like, poor thing. Haram in Arabic, I mean, it's like pobrecito in Spanish, but it's a different meaning. It's haram. I mean, you don't have dogs? Then Mamdani has the balls because he's got this charisma thing that nobody checks him on, but they're starting to. Have you seen some of these these people coming together saying, "Hey, bitch, you lied to us," Good for them, and they're having buyer's remorse. Immigration is good, really. Tell me how many non-Muslims can immigrate to Mecca? How many? I'll wait. You can't even visit.
Be waiting a while.
Well, of course, the hypocrisy is off the charts, which is a cornerstone of leftism. Leftism, we have to say, what do you value in leftism and progressivism? Hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. Because their goal is power. It's not principles. They're not trying to advocate principles. They're trying to acquire power, and they're going to do it at all costs. In Islam, we study taqiyya. What's taqiyya? The idea that you can lie or deceive to push and put further the Islamic movement. Oh, they try to defend it, the apologists for Islam. Bullshit. Look how it's implemented. Look at the study. Look at the ideology behind it. Taqiyya is real. And people are starting to wake up to this. And so the reason why Ben Carson was right about a person who is Islamic, he said Muslim, cannot be president, is because you can't claim allegiance to anything other than the Quran, the Sirah, and the Hadiths. I mean, and so you couldn't pledge to the Constitution to protect and defend. You're trying to replace it. It's imperialistic in mindset. And so what you're having now and you're dealing with is jihad, different now, is jihad by immigration. That's what they're doing. That's their plan. They have this anchor immigration. They're multiplying. They're having a bunch of babies, and they're being forceful. And once they get in power, then they use force. I mean, look at their playbook. It's obvious. Look at Europe. I mean, in London and Liverpool,
it's happened time and time again.
And it's more than London and Liverpool. The most popular baby name in London and Liverpool is Muhammad. Hello, wake the up, wake up. But these stupid, and that's why, to your point about Vance, he was kicking him in the nuts, and then Rubio's like, okay, I'm gonna jab you in the nuts now, but let me pick you back up. I mean, but wake up,
pretty much.
Mamdani is even threatening Hochul now for not taxing the rich. He says he's going to do it on his own.
This is my point. You're my friend until I can dominate you. That's not real friendship. You're an opportunist. You're a Trojan horse. All the progressive, the socialists, the communists, they're Trojan horses. And Islam is this vehicle to it. I mean, look, listen to the imams, and they're out there, and they're not even being secret about it.
That's right.
Study Islam, and I've been called an Islamophobe. I'm not. I don't have an irrational fear. I have a concern for Islam because I don't think Islam blesses the vast majority of people. Go and check. Go look at Islamic countries. See how many people are thriving. Look at Iran before 1975, whatever it was.
Before 1979.
1979. And look at Iran now. And look at the people starving and hungry and saying this regime doesn't represent us. They want freedom. And so all I'm saying is we have a laboratory of this being implemented, of communism, of Islamic theocracy, of all this stuff. We have all this. We know. We don't have to guess where this goes. And then all you have to do is study the ideology of this worldview. And it is not to bless the vast majority of people. It definitely won't bless women.
And an educated population would have seen this coming. So what's happening in New York City was, it was predictable. There's a little embarrassed here because I'm like, well, why are we making a big deal out of this? We kind of knew this was coming. But the reality is that the majority of Americans don't really pay attention to that. And you've got a significant portion of foreigners in New York City who are voting in, foreign-born persons that are voting in guys like Mamdani. This is what happens. This is really sort of an outworking of the warning that Rubio issued at the Munich Security Conference. And that's why he said America doesn't come to the table with clean hands here. We've been playing with fire here for years, and now we're seeing the consequences. So when you see the Adhan, which is the Islamic call to prayer, at 5 o'clock in the morning, echoing through New York streets.
But you can't say God bless you.
How the hell did we get here?
Who would have thought, George and Karen, you're too young for this, but during the World Trade Towers, when 9/11, if I would have said, how much will you bet that New York City will vote in an Islamic mayor?
That's the painful irony.
Think
is that
about
you've got
that. Think about that.
neighborhoods in New York City.
What would you have bet?
Nah.
What would you have bet?
No, I know.
In less than 3 decades, in a little over 2 decades, they're going to vote in an Islamic mayor.
Right. And so now you have the Adhan echoing through streets in New York where they still haven't quite recovered from the pain of September 11th, 2001. This is disgusting. It's outrageous. And so do we want to really be like the UK, who's in deep, deep trouble? I don't know.
Australia is not far behind. So Spain.
I don't know how
Italy
the UK recovers without a Bukele. Without a Nayib Bukele.
Yep.
I don't know eventually how the United States recovers without a Nayib Bukele. And yes, I'm sorry. Let me just press pause here. This is not an advertisement for it. I'm just saying how it is. Yes, that's right. Bukele, as much work as it took him.
Why can't you advertise him?
Because it took him suspending habeas
gotcha.
to do what he had to do. We don't advertise that.
Got it.
Okay, we don't even talk about it.
Well,
okay?
George, but the Constitution calls for that at some point. It's called a revolt,
as a
civil
matter
war.
of last resort.
Last resort. And so what do you need to suspend due process? What do you need? You need to be the murder capital of the world. How about that? No, maybe not the world, but of your region. Yeah. That's what he had to do. So you needed this benevolent dictator to come in, as you've talked about in the past, George. And you needed some type of this detox, this shock and awe type deal. Your pool is green. You just shock it with acid. You can't swim in it. It's not welcoming, but it's necessary. And God forbid we get there. And that's why why I'm so passionate about due process and our Constitution to uphold it, so we don't have to get to that last resort. I don't want that for my children and my grandchildren.
Amen. I was going to say there's a woman, and I was trying to find her post, Nico, because I think she's doing yeoman's work and she should be credited for the work that she's doing. I hesitate to call her an influencer because I hate the name influencer. It's so stupid. But basically, she's got a following, and she's saying a lot of salient, smart things about what's happening with Islam in the United States. Her name is Amy Meck, M-E-K, and she posted, and I'm trying to find her post, and she was explaining what's going on in New York, and she tweeted this. Another Adhan blasts through New York City streets. This is the sound of conquest.
Gosh.
Let that word sink in, because that's exactly politically. That's what this is. Political Islam.
That sink. Who's this chick?
Amy Meck.
Wow.
She said, "This is the sound of conquest, echoing in New York City right now. The Islamic call to prayer Adhan is being amplified louder and more aggressively, starting as early as 5 a.m., invading homes, neighborhoods, and the once proud skyline where thousands were murdered on 9/11 in Islam's name. Listen to this new video, and she posts a video, which I want to send. You know, I'm not the video king here, but we can post it up. The blaring Adam dominates the streets, forcing every resident. I did listen to the video. It is chilling. Forcing every resident, Christian, Jewish, atheist, to hear the declaration of Islamic supremacy multiple times a day. That is exactly what that is. That's
the morning prayer.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Under leaders like Eric Adams, who greenlit loud broadcasts for Fridays and Ramadan, and now the push under jihadi Zoran Mamdani's influence, this isn't religious freedom. It's dawah. It's basically a takeover from City Hall.
I'll let you finish.
It's submission, she says. I wanted to get to that because that's exactly what Islam means. It's the next stage. They don't need planes anymore.
Yep.
They're conquering with sound, with policy, and silence.
And fear.
From those who should defend our values. New York is falling, one amplified Allahu Akbar at a time.
Man.
Let that sink in. But
She's right.
You kind of skimmed over it. Islam means submission. That's what it means. It doesn't mean togetherness. It doesn't mean welcome. It doesn't mean I love you. It means submission. That means you submit because you're in pain. You submit under pressure.
Yeah.
You submit in force. I mean, jiu-jitsu, fighting, martial arts. I mean, I train. My kids train. I mean, submit is something necessary at times. But and for them, it's necessary to take over. It's imperialistic. They want one caliphate under one caliph. That's the ideology. Now, if you want to break away from it, you want to reclaim it, you want to do something different, great, do it. I mean, I'm all for you. That's why I talk about Islam and not Muslims. Because you can be labeled a Muslim but not support that and believe in that.
That's right.
But people need to wake up.
That's right.
I mean, this, and I think more people are educated now, and Bill Maher has been talking about this long before it was popular to talk about and get in debates with people. But more and more people are waking up to this, and this epic city here in Texas, and all this. I don't know why we bend over backwards like the Eric Adams in the past, and all these wussy-ass bullshit politicians. They bend over backwards for Islam as they criticize Christianity, when Christianity is the undergirding of why this constitutional republic works. It ain't Islam, Jack. Do your homework. Educate yourself. It's not.
I have to read something that Anthony said. He
Yes.
said, are y'all so ignorant that another
Costello?
religion... Yes.
Oh, I like Anthony.
Are
overall.
y'all so ignorant that another religion scares you? Stop ringing your church bells.
Oh, Anthony, come on, brother. You need to take me up on my lunch. He owes me lunch. I owe him lunch also. Anthony and I have wonderful conversations offline a few times. And so call me after the show's over so we can talk about it, Anthony. But I say this lovingly. I'm not being disrespectful. That's an ignorant just meaning not knowing statement. That's an ignorant statement. I'm ignorant to a lot of things. I'm not ignorant to Islam. I promise you that.
Yeah.
I'm not. And so that's not. No one's. I'm not afraid of another religion. But it seems everybody's afraid of Christianity, although Christianity doesn't kick down your door and choke you out or cut your head off. I mean, but so I'm concerned about another religion that is really a political movement wrapped in a religion. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not afraid of it. I'm concerned about it rightfully.
And that's just history. And
Yeah.
Anthony just needs to get caught up. And I don't mean that disparagingly.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you got to get caught up.
Call me after. Anthony has my number. Text me when the show's over, Anthony.
Happy to share some sources for you that I think would be very useful.
Yep.
But this is a matter of history. This is a matter of precedent.
But Sid also says, what's next for New York?
Well-
What is it going to be? Is it going to be the DA as Muslim?
well-
Is it going to be the police chief
No, it's a
that comes
great.
in?
Nico
That's what happens.
Nico touched on this. Listen, simply look no farther than the United Kingdom. I mean, truly, this is our mother country. So it's not a horrible parallel. We're sitting here, at least as of a year ago. It's a fact that there were over 3,000 mosques in England, over 130 Sharia courts, over 150.
But explain what a Sharia court is. Explain.
A Sharia court is where Islamic law
That's right.
trumps
Yes.
any other law.
That's right.
And so you've got
And guess what? That means if you're homosexual, you could be killed. There's honor killings. You can mutilate the clitoris of a woman because she's not supposed to enjoy sex. She's there just for procreation. You can beat a woman for insubordination. A woman needs at least 4 witnesses to even claim to be raped, and she can't testify at her own rape trial because she's just chattel, she's just property. So her opinion means nothing in a court of law. She can't inherit as much of a woman as a man through inherency and through wills and probate issues. I mean, she can be unilaterally divorced from by a man, but a man can unilaterally divorce her. She cannot divorce a man. A man can have multiple wives. She can't have multiple. She has to cover her face to only look. Go on and on.
Sure.
Go on and on. Check how many, Anthony and everybody else, tell me how many pride parades are in Islamic countries. I'm going to wait.
It's just a religion.
I'm gonna wait.
Yeah.
Crickets.
Zero. Now, I'm not saying I support that. I'm just saying, but they have the right to do that. I want to persuade them. See, there's two ways to run a country, but through force or through persuasion. Our founding fathers chose persuasion. Guess what? Our Lord, the God, the author of the universe, chose persuasion because he really wanted a relationship. God could have forced himself on us. He doesn't. Jesus says in Revelations, I'm knocking, right? And then if you open the door, I'll come in and dine with you. He makes an appeal to us, and he persuades us, and then he invites us in. And that's why the undergirding of this Constitution is one of persuasion, free thought, free speech. And guess what? You protect that free speech with your Second Amendment, and protect the government from getting too big. And you can defend yourself, and you have a right not to be a victim. We can go on and on about this. Luke 22:36. If you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. We can go on and on and on about this. These ideas that undergird are the ideas behind this Constitutional Republic. So I'll go on. I've seen this for years. I was in politics. I saw the implementation of these Sharia courts. I saw the ideology being implemented and where it goes, even to people that I disagree with. I am going to passionately defend the right of somebody to live a personal life the way you want to. And I sure as hell am not going to stand idle while somebody abuses that person, throws them off a building, or kills them or attacks them for that. We'll go back to persuading each other and going back to debate, but you should be safe.
Yeah, and what's next? You're going to see more and more insurgencies. You've got a marriage between one insurgent force, which is Islam, and another insurgent force, which is the left. And so you have both of these forces working together to undermine Americanism. That's plain and simple what's going on. You can see it in the United Kingdom. I simply mentioned that there was those things in the United Kingdom, Nico, but there's also practical cultural effects. There's 78% of Muslim women, at least 78% of Muslim women don't work. They receive state support and free accommodation. 63% of all Muslims don't have a job in England. Yet they're cranking out about 6 to 8 kids, and those kids receive free accommodation. And so you have literally now in every school in the UK, it's required to teach lessons about Islam.
Not Christianity.
That's a requirement. Now, you ask the average Brit, was anyone ever given an opportunity to vote for that? No.
Nope.
No. And so that's what's happening systematically and slowly in the United States. That has to stop.
And we bend over backwards. Backwards. People can walk out of schools to go pray 5 times a day. You can do this, but you can't be a coach. Remember the coach took his to ask for voluntary prayer after a football game, understanding that Judeo-Christian ethic is what undergirds this country, not Islamic ethic, not Hindu, not Buddhist. You don't have to like it. We're not forcing it on you. But you have to, what set of ideas shaped our civic government? It was Judeo-Christian. I'm sorry, you don't have to like it. If you don't like it, move somewhere else.
And now those taxpayer dollars are subsidizing the instruction of students to hate those ideals, to hate themselves, to hate their own country, to hate their own political system. Why else would you have administrators and teachers leading students across the country out of classrooms that are tax subsidized to protest, quote unquote, protest against ICE? What are we, crazy? Those taxpayer dollars are there to instruct students to be civically minded students, to teach them how to be constructive American citizens, to love God, to love themselves, to love their neighbor. If you don't want to love God, you don't have to, but you at least love yourself and your neighbor. But instead, the opposite is happening. So what we're seeing is
in God
this
we
culture,
trust, not in Allah we trust. God is Yahweh. You look historically, it's not Allah. I mean, and we can talk about.
And so insurgency is central to Islam. It's central to the left. And so what is an insurgency? An insurgency is a political way to destabilize a culture. And it uses coercion, it uses subversion. And there's a lot of outrage all the time, these constant emotional outbursts. And it uses propaganda. and a tool of propaganda. You guys have heard the common term now, which is used way overused, and we should probably define it: gaslighting. There's a lot of gaslighting. This is central to the left. Gaslighting is a form of psychological and emotional manipulation where the perpetrator deliberately distorts reality in the mind of the victim. It causes the victim to doubt their own perceptions, what they know to be true, their judgments, their memories, their experiences. And why? To control. So you're seeing insurgency after insurgency after insurgency in the United States. I've seen an explosion of it in the aftermath of George Floyd. This is a way of life. And I'm concerned that we expect to see more of it. I worry about that. And eventually you have a revolution. Revolutions are sudden. Insurgencies are incremental. But a revolution is a sudden toppling, violent toppling of a political order.
We don't want it.
I worry about that. That's what they want. Getting back to Sid, this is the endpoint, Sid. This is the objective. And so Nico's brought this up, that you see this marriage between the left and Islam. But when revolution comes, Islam's not playing around.
Nope.
Ain't going to play around, baby.
The left is done. The left is done. Trust
So
me.
they won't be boycotting the State of the Union
Watch
at
what
that
happens.
time.
History is full of useful idiots.
They won't have a choice.
Paying the
Right.
price.
Look, the State of the Union, first of all, I see your transition because I know we got to wrap up here in a little while. But who cares?
Right.
Who cares? I mean, I wish we would stop State of the Union, because the State of the Union is a bunch of political grandstanding from both sides. You have half the room clap, half the room this. They yell, they scream, and everybody falls over themselves to shake the president's hand on the way in. And why is the Supreme Court there? For what reason? Why is the Supreme Court? And then everybody invites a guest.
They didn't even look like they wanted to be there last
but
time.
But they shouldn't be there. If
Right.
you look at the purpose of the State of the Union, Article 2, Section 3 requires, this is the requirement of the Constitution. It requires the president to, from time to time, give to Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. So George Washington, John Adams delivered it in person. Thomas Jefferson switched it back to a written report in 1801. And then it was from 1801 to 1913. It was a letter. It was a report until Woodrow Wilson, the worst president ever, went back in person. Huh?
Almost.
Well, shit. There's a couple
competitions.
right now.
There's a couple competitions lately. But all I'm saying is that it changed back. It's just a report. The president can get in front of the nation or Congress whenever he wants to. Why do you have to do a State of the Union address? It's grandstand. So to me, I could care less if they show up. I think it's childish, but they have the right not to show up. There's no constitutional mandate they have to be there. And I wish one president, it's not going to be this one, would have the guts to just say, I'm not doing it anymore. I will address the nation when I want to. I'll address Congress at a different time, but get rid of the State of the Union address. Just do a damn report. I mean, it's just worthless. It's divisive to me.
That's what it's become. It didn't need to be that way. I mean, there was a time in times of great crisis in the United States where it made sense to bring both houses of Congress together under one roof. The President of the United States. I mean, you have, and just to invite as a courtesy, I have all three branches of government there
That's not
to
mandated.
model.
Yeah, it's a courtesy. But
I'm just saying, Nico, if we had actually a functional order between these branches.
I agree.
But we don't. And so it turns into this chaotic. And the only reason I brought it up as
yelling
a
at
topic.
each other, people yelling
Nancy
at the president.
Pelosi ripping apart.
Well, yeah, and then you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then Al, whatever his name is, and everybody's yelling.
exactly.
I mean, and we're going to turn into these third world countries. They start
what was
fighting in
meant
Congress.
to be a model, just an illustration, a ritual to illustrate our unity.
That's right.
Despite differences of opinion, has now become a platform for insurgency. That's my point. Nothing is safe at all. Everything is an opportunity for these clowns to be insurgents. So keep that word in mind, because that's central to their political functions. That this is what they're going to do. You're going to see more of it because they don't have anything else. The days of deliberation and persuasion and debate and disagreeing over meaningful differences, both of them rational, just competing, right, for which one would be more effective maybe once implemented. Those days are over, sadly. And I worry. It's just a worry. And I pray about it all the time because of my family's history coming from a culture that was beleaguered by insurgencies that turned revolutionary, yes, under the pretext of racism. So I'm a survivor from that nonsense. I'm prickly about it. And I see the country not even inching anymore, but taking leaps towards a culture of insurgency and revolution. And Americans have no idea how close they're going to get to losing their own country.
Ugh.
This is dangerous stuff.
Yep.
And we spend time on the show to help people understand what's really at issue. So when you're voting, you're no longer voting just for different political platforms, but you're truly voting for different worldviews, despite the imperfections of the GOP. And we talk about them here all the time. We have a huge House. I don't know if people know. We have 63 people that are stepping down from Congress as of last week. 54 congressmen, 9 senators. There's an exodus out of Congress right now. This is a weird time. So who will replace those individuals? Focus on the worldview. Focus on you. The GOP has serious problems. But ultimately, we do not have a worldview problem. The worldview at the heart of conserving Americans' principles and ideals is the worldview that founded the country. That's a good worldview. The worldview of the Democrat is hostile. It's hostile to the worldview of Americanism. This isn't just little political differences. These are worldview differences. That's where we are.
Any comments?
Wish we weren't, but it's where we are.
No, but maybe these individuals are stepping down because it's no longer going to be as lucrative as it has been in the past.
And Nico, that's probably
That's
a
another
whole discussion of why they're stepping down. But
Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's certainly one of the reasons. That's true, Karen. I think that's one of the reasons.
Well, look. That's why when Trump won, was I very pleased? Yes, I was so pleased. I thought the Lord spared this country, and that's not hyperbolic. I mean, it's real. But many people thought we had arrived, and bullshit. That was just the beginning for me.
That's basically what Rubio said in Munich. He goes, "Are you kidding me? We're not. We're
Nowhere close,
no.
man."
More work to be done.
Well, let's see what happens. Let's see how this November shakes out. From now to November matters. We didn't talk about the economy, but hopefully the economy looks like it's going in the right direction, and that's one less argument that the Democrats will have in November, hopefully. Hopefully the Republicans can get their shit together.
And go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, look at unemployment measures, look at inflationary measures, look at real wages. I mean, all of those trajectories are heading in the right direction.
It's heading in the right direction.
If you have questions about the GDP and the report that just came out that showed a deflation in GDP, that there's actually a huge silver lining there. There's a reason why the GDP was temporarily down, and it has to do with the layoff of around 323,000 federal employees over the last year. I mean, when you lose 10% of the workforce.
But yet, we're approaching $40 trillion in debt. And nobody wants to address it. I don't care what anybody says, Republicans and Democrats, nobody wants to address it. And if you think that this country can continue that way, you're insane. I mean, $1 trillion. What is the stat that I looked up? It was like $1 trillion.
Yeah, for interest.
But just the increase. I mean, I don't even remember. We're adding $1 trillion every quarter because we debt spend. $1 trillion every quarter. What are we doing?
Yeah.
You can't run a business that way. I mean, we are failing in running this country, to include Republicans and Trump and everybody else. I mean, $40 trillion. And so no one cares about the debt. All they care about is ragging on the other side about the debt.
Can't believe you're bringing this up right now.
Well,
I got all
talk about
kinds of shit to say about that.
I got boxed with the kids, so sorry.
Okay.
We'll talk about it next week. We got to go boxing.
You
All
got
right.
a meeting too, George. Shush.
You bring up Congress? What are you doing, Karen?
We'll do it next week. We'll start. We'll talk about it next week. All right, guys. Thanks for anything last minute.
No. Your
All right.
mother says, do something good. Vote for my son, Mark LaHood.
Amen.
That's
Amen,
true.
Mama.
Yeah, and go back to the beginning of the show to see what I said about Mark and his election. And yes, and vote for him for sure. And I was really tempered about what I said about his opponent because I've just been around this long enough. But what a bitch he is for lying and for just trying to distort the facts. But it comes with the territory. But you're going to be called a bitch by me. Yeah. That's the way it is. And so vote for Mark. He's done a great job. He really has. Tell people, share people, and vote for people that you think are have principle based, not that are puppets. And they're going to listen to special interest, big interest, or even to their group. I mean, you have to be able to disagree. There should be healthy debate and disagreement in conservatism, so you can make sure that our ideas have been tested and that they're real. Maybe there's a little tweak or some shaving off somewhere, but regardless. So God bless you guys. Go out and vote and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.